Three students. One conversation where film theory collides with the reality of filmmaking. Life after film school. Today's guest, Wes Craven, co-writer and producer of The Hills Have Eyes 2.
What the hell are scientists doing way the hell out here?
Where is everybody?
Hello! This place creeps me out. What is it? Took her in there. This just turned into a search and rescue mission.
Hills Have Eyes 2 is the sequel to the 2006 film.
Yep.
Where did you come up with the storyline for the sequel?
I had the idea of what happens after the sequel, or after the remake, let's say, Alex Oddjaw's film. You know, with a family being half slaughtered and all these horrendous things happening there on this army base, the Army must have had to do something about it. I'm sure heads rolled. I'm sure, you know, they covered it up, whatever. And we started talking about what if a unit were sent in to make sure there were no more people like this in there, so you would have none of these public embarrassments. That's how it kind of started, and then it kind of swung around to, wait a minute, we don't want to redo Aliens, and you know, where a crack squad goes in with all sorts of weaponry. So the idea was that you have a group of American kids in the National Guard going up to face these people that are completely out of their ken, completely something that they would never think they'd have to face. Now, I'd be disingenuous if I didn't say that there's obviously a parallel here. And it's not really a political one so much as almost like an existential one, is that in the United States right now is in this very horrible situation. Whether you think troops should have gone there or not, they're there. And they're up to their necks in alligators. As one general once said, it's very hard to drain the swamp when you're up to your ass in alligators. And that's where they are. And, you know, and they're fighting people that at first seem to be just like animals because of what they do. But the growing realization is, no, they're humans, and they think what they're doing is right, and they're smart, and they're, with very little money and resources, are, you know, almost bringing us grinding to a halt at great cost. So we wanted to have that kind of a situation where you just have kids, you know, out there thinking they're going to be doing one thing, and suddenly are facing these really fast, really smart, animal-like humans who are in the mines and can reach up from underneath and grab you and pull you down, and are extremely effective because they're right in their own backyard and they know it like the back of their hand.
They took her in there.
You co-wrote The Hills Have Eyes 2 with your son in a hotel room in a month.
Yes.
What was that experience like?
You want to talk about hell? No, I wrote it with Jonathan, my son, and we went there every morning, starting May 1st. And worked until we couldn't keep our eyes open anymore. And I think both of us thought this could be really disastrous. We had only 1 month to write. The studio was not committed to making the movie. They were willing to pay us to write a script. And Jonathan had been a writer in many different guises. He had written some scripts, and he also had been writing for small magazines and everything else for many years. So I knew he was a disciplined writer. And we just went in there, and you know what, it worked out beautifully. We just busted our asses and worked together. There was no, like, you write something and then I'll criticize it. It was we each would write a section or a scene, and then we'd email it to each other across the room. And then that guy would do a pass on the other guy's stuff, and vice versa. After a week or 10 days, maybe even a very careful plotting and outlining. That was one of the harder things that I've done in my writing life, because, you know, we just were exhausted when we came out of there. But we came out with a really good script, and the studio read it and said, okay, green light, go.
Martin Weiss directed the sequel.
Yep.
A director that's primarily known to American audiences as a commercial and music video director. How did you know he was going to be the right director for this production?
You don't. You never, you know, on these kind of films, you don't. We're going out with directors that are doing maybe their first or second film. In the case of Alex, it was his second film that anybody knew about. He'd done 2 before that. With Martin, we had seen Butterfly, which was a very edgy film. So we knew he wasn't afraid of edgy material, and that he had taste, and that he knew how to handle a camera. And you could look at his music videos and his, you know, his commercials and see that he could do really extraordinary stuff. So it was an educated guess, and it was a roll of the dice. You know, that's how these things work. He came through great, and it's you know, it's a wonderful film, and it's got great pace and very strong. These films are risky, and you're always going on gut instinct. And what you've learned over 30-some years, I don't want to say how many 30 years, but you know.
So as the writer and producer, how do you work with the director of one of your films?
Carefully. You try to keep the person that wrote that film, yourself, that part of you, back in the back room, you know. Where's that line I wrote? You know, not do that. I mean, there were some hard times. There were some tough times where I said, you know, I think this part should be this way, or this is dragging, or whatever. And there's parts where Martin would say, you know, this is a difference in style. You want me to do it that way, fine, but that's not me. So, you know, basically, you realize that you can't push a rope, and you can't drive somebody as if they're you, because they're not. So you step back and you say, okay, man, go do it. And the results are great. So, you know, it's like, it's a self-discipline as well as anything else. And sometimes you ask yourself, why did I ever give my, you know, my script to somebody else, and why didn't I just go direct it? But ultimately, it's nice that somebody else is out there in the 120-degree heat dodging scorpions.
How many do you think there are?
Who knows? Too many. What are you doing?
I'm saving one for myself.
Hey, do you remember what Craig said? Dead is never better. We're gonna get out of here.
You shot The Hills Have Eyes and the sequel in Morocco when they were set in the New Mexico desert. I was wondering what compelled you to make that decision, and what were some of the challenges that came along with that choice?
This is the business part of film business.
Yeah.
This is a very delicate subject, and you know, as a director myself, I try to keep my films in the United States. Sometimes a great risk. For instance, on Scream, Bob Weinstein insisted that we shoot in Montreal, and it was well along in the process of having been hired and everything else, and I refused. And he said, well, then you're fired. And I said, okay, I understand. And I walked out of the building, got to the car to take me to the airport, and somebody came running out and said, okay, Bob wants to see you again. And he came back and he said, well, if you feel that strongly, fine. But it was an extra $1 million. In some cases, with a budget as small as the Hills budgets, that $1 million is, you know, a huge part of your budget. So if you go out to a different country where you don't have all the union restrictions and fees and everything else, you just can put so much more money on the screen, and it's just one of those terrible facts. So to us, Morocco seemed like the craziest place in the world to go. For openers, it's a Muslim country, and we thought if we went in there, they'd kill us. As it turns out, Morocco is a great place to shoot, and people have been shooting there from Black Hawk Down to Alexander and many other films. And they have some really nice studios, and the people are friendly, and it's safe. So you have this extraordinary landscape. Morocco, you can look for 50 miles in any direction, and you don't see anything.
What is it?
The Hills Have Eyes has very gory makeup and effects. Was there a sense that you needed to one-up yourselves with the sequel?
No, we'd never think that way. Well, look, you know, we're in the business of making kind of shocking films. Hopefully they have a lot of different aspects to them, but you want to be as punchy as the next guy. You want to have things that people remember. What you don't want to do is just be slavish to it and say, okay, let's throw on some more blood, or let's do something more horrible to this person. So I think all of the deaths in the film are memorable in one way or the other, but they don't go on and on and on, and we feel like we're not, you know, gloating about them or you know, wallowing in it. But yeah, they're films that there's a slice of Grand Guignol, and there's a slice of sort of almost mythology. You know, I mean, they're very similar to Greek myths in the sense that people lose their heads, and there's monsters with one eye come out of caves and eat you, and you know, there is something sort of almost fairy tales about these kinds of horror films.
Thank you so much.
Okay.
Very much.